If you feel like something changed in your 40s, as if your aging suddenly sped up overnight, I'm sorry to say that you may be correct. There's some truth in it. Something does change. It's not a dramatic thing. It's a change that happens around about the age of 44 without anything to really telegraph that it's coming. Things that used to work for you suddenly don't, and things that never really bothered you suddenly do. And the stuff that you've been told to do all these years, like try harder, eat cleaner, be more consistent, that stuff just doesn't have the results that you expected to. But what if the problem isn't the effort that you're trying to put in? But what if the body and the brain that you're putting that effort into changing have actually fundamentally changed? That's what this episode is all about. Welcome to the metabolic movement. Almost all the advice that you've ever been given about food, weight, energy, how to look after yourself was built on a model of a body that ages slowly and steadily. This gradual, predictable decline, like a graph slowly, as if a car was gradually wearing out, a little bit less efficient every year, but fundamentally the same machine. And that model is fundamentally wrong because you're not a car. It's not wrong in a technical way, it's wrong in a foundational way, right? Age doesn't gradually change in a smooth line. It actually changes in sudden, clustered bursts. So advice built around a gradual decline just can't be right. In 2024, Stanford University published a study that has stuck in my head because it made me notice all this stuff about myself that I wouldn't have really thought about before. It was a cruel read for a middle-aged man who's not accepting that he's middle-aged. They tracked over 135,000 different molecules inside human bodies: proteins, fats, gut bacteria, and a load more. And it was across people who were aged 25 to 75. What they found overturned the basic assumption that we have about aging. Around 81% of the molecules they tracked didn't change gradually. They changed in bursts, sudden, clustered, rapid shifts, and those bursts were appearing at around the same two ages. Around 44 and around 60. 2 points where the body and brain seem to go through a rapid kind of restructuring, which is something that we didn't know before. Now, guess how old I was when that study was published in 2024? I just turned 45, right? And I had noticed something different. A lot more grey hair, my skin was looking different, and my hairline was definitely changing according to photographs that I was seeing of myself in videos. And before you take this 44 and 60 rule as gospel, the research does have some limitations. It was a study of 108 people, mostly based in California. And the follow-up that they did, that period was relatively short. And the researchers themselves said that they couldn't always tell what was cause and what was effect. So they couldn't tell if the biological changes were driving behavior or the behavior was driving those biological changes. Science is rarely clean. I don't think we should pretend otherwise. Anyway, the core finding that aging is non-linear, that it clusters around these two specific windows, 44 and 60. They're just two of the windows we know about. That lines up with actual decades of disease risk data, which point all in that same direction. It wasn't a surprise coming out of a single lab, but it was a confirmation of something that the evidence has been building up towards over a long time. So if we think about it, what actually happens at 44? Well, the researchers initially assumed that the changes that they were seeing in women were being driven by perimenopause, which is a reasonable assumption. But when they split their data by sex, men were showing the same molecular shifts at exactly the same ages. So, what is driving that 44 window? It's whatever it is, it's bigger than hormones alone, right? It's another thing that we actually don't yet fully understand. I've covered in a different episode that your metabolism doesn't suddenly just slow down by your 40s. But what this data reveals is that your lipid metabolism, the way your body processes fat, both from food and from storage, shifts, which means the same diet that you've eaten for years can suddenly start producing different results. And it seems that the process that your body uses to handle the food and energy may change a bit underneath you. The way you metabolize alcohol changes too. The enzymes your liver uses to break down alcohol become less efficient about this point, and that is why 2 glasses of wine feels a little bit different at 44 to what you remember in your 20s, and why the recovery, the hangover the next morning, is much harder than it used to be. The machinery just has started to run differently. Also, at the age of around 44, caffeine metabolism changes. The same coffee that you've been drinking for 20 years, actually, the caffeine starts staying in your system a bit longer, which means it's disrupting your sleep more than it would have done in the old days, and maybe even creating anxiety that wasn't there before. And you can't figure this stuff out easily because you don't change anything, but underneath it all, your body has changed at a molecular level without you really knowing it. Cardiovascular markers also start shifting. So proteins that hold your muscle and skin, they also start to behave differently. So there's evidence to show that these differences that I was suddenly seeing in the mirror in my skin were real. Hooray! Your recovery from exercise also slows at around 44. So if you injure yourself, it's likely to take a bit longer to recover as well. The really annoying thing about these changes is it's not one of these things happening at a time. It's not like a gradual cascade. It's all of them at the same time, which is why these single variable advice that we're given stops working, like cut less food, take this supplement, add this workout, do somebody's morning routine. All of these solutions assume that one little thing has gone wrong, as if you're this machine that needs one dial adjusting. What if like 6 to 10 dials are moving simultaneously? What if the whole dashboard has changed, like in Inside Out 2? A hack that's designed to be a single adjustment just isn't going to help there. And that frustration of trying harder and still not getting results, it's still, like it always hasn't been, still isn't a willpower problem. It's a mismatch between the solution that you've chosen and what's actually happening in the body and brain that you are living in right now. So that's what happens at 44. The shift at 60 is slightly different. Looks like carbohydrate metabolism changes, which will affect your blood sugar regulation, your energy levels, and how much risk you are at of having type 2 diabetes, and your immune function, also your kidney function, and the oxygen carrier activity, easy for me to say, essentially how your blood transports oxygen around your body, that declines, which has knock-on effects for stamina and energy. So the early 60s are such a critical window, but paying attention to what's happening before you get there really matters as well. And I'm not trying to put a downer on aging by confirming the obvious that you already were thinking with a science paper I read. I'm not even an expert in this matters, right? I'm a learner driver who's getting to grips with this process at the same time as you are. But what I would like you to do is think about the advice that surrounds midlife health traditionally, the content that you consume, all the books, the programs, the things that well-meaning people say to you. Almost all of it is built around the idea that if you're struggling at a certain age, I'm saying 44-ish, the variable that needs changing is you. Your habits are not quite right. Your consistency, your commitment's not there. The implicit message that's underneath all of this is that you already know what to do. You've been doing it, and you just need to do it better. But what if suddenly the problem isn't what you were doing? What if the advice that was designed for this body that you used to use, even if it was your own system, is for slightly different biology? What if eat less, move more was actually a reasonable answer for a 20-year-old you, but for somebody who's older, who's got these lipid metabolism, cardiovascular marker, alcohol processing, muscle recovery changes, all of that stuff's changing. Surely that should change how you approach looking after your body at certain times in your life. So let's say you've turned 44. What does this mean for you practically right now? For me, it might, well, I think it means that the gap between the effort that I'm putting in, the things I'm trying to do, like I noticed in a dramatic transformation I had 4 years ago, a lot of the things that I did aren't working in the same way. And I thought I was imagining this, but going back to this research recently has helped me understand what's probably happening. I'm working with a body and brain that has adjusted the rules very secretly. I think, so starting points for your self-improvement process at this age shouldn't be a new diet or new hacks or a single supplement. The starting point has to be understanding what's actually happening in your specific and unique body and becoming engaged in how this body works and changes over time. You probably need your own data from things like blood tests, scans, wearable devices, and you need to track changes over time. Because once you know and understand some of these things, once you can see what's happening under the surface, You stop trying to solve a today and beyond, a future problem with a 2010 answer that you knew worked before. And then you start making decisions that actually fit the life and the body that you're in right now. And that's when you can make real change. That's what this show is all about. So thanks for joining me. There's research links in the show notes, and I would say go and read them. Ask me a question about them. You can comment on Spotify, on YouTube, and you can find me at Glucose Guide on Instagram. Look after yourself. Until next time.